Hello, good morning. My name is Lori Dickman, and welcome to Quilting with Lori. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. Last week, I shared a video with you on an estate sale fabric haul where I came home with all kinds of wonderful fabrics. I shared my ideas and my thought process with you in that video, which I'll link below. But I shared with you how I planned to organize it and categorize it, what I planned to do with those fabrics, whether I was going to use them for actual quilts or decor or jelly roll rugs or bags and gifts that I can give to others. And some of it I might give to friends as well. But I encourage you to watch that video. It'll help you to identify how to go through and categorize your fabric hauls if you love to go to estate sales and thrift shops and pick up fabric. But today what I'm going to do is share with you a jelly roll rug, a very scrappy jelly roll rug. Many of you asked for that, so I'm going to share with you how I'm going to put that together. So if you remember from last week, I had this gallon bag filled. Actually, I had a couple of them, and they were filled with reds and greens and some creams, etc. And so this morning, what I have done is gone through and pressed all of the fabric, and then I stripped it up into 2.5-inch jelly roll size strips. So that's what I have, and I've separated them into greens, into lights, and into reds. And then there was this Christmas fabric that has kind of a black or a dark background. I think I'm going to use this for the outside edge of the jelly roll rug. And then, of course, I went to my stash. I shared with you that whenever I take a quilt off the long arm after I've quilted it, or maybe if I quilted on my domestic sewing machine, but you square it up and then you have this leftover batting and backing. And so I do roll all of that batting up into 2.5-inch strips. And in this case, I guess it's a 2-inch strip, but it's going to work for me. 2.5-inch strips is really what you should use so that they match the size of your jelly roll strip. But I'm going to use this for this jelly roll rug, and I've got a couple of them. When you make jelly roll rugs, typically you use these rolls of fabric. They're jelly rolls, they're called. That's I think Moda started that name many years ago, but these are 2.5-inch strips. And normally in the strips, there are like 42 of them. And when you go through and look at the strips, the colors that the colorway in which they've laid it out is just beautiful, and it might be a perfect way for you to actually create your jelly roll rug, just following the order and the sequence that they have them in there. So just open them up and lay them out in that fashion so that they're exactly laying in that order as you're stripping up your jelly roll. So another thing to keep in mind, if you're using an actual jelly roll, each of the strips is going to be about between 40 and 42 inches in length. And that is a great length. They're all going to be the same length. In my case, with what I have here, I have a variety of lengths. Some of my strips are short. Some of them are all the way 44 inches long. So what I'm going to be doing as I'm selecting my fabrics for my jelly roll rug, I'm going to be sewing strips together end to end. You're going to have an extremely long jelly roll of the fabrics. And what I'm going to do is probably just start sewing them together and maybe put 4 or 5 of the reds, then grab 4 or 5 of the creams, maybe 4 or 5 of the greens, and then go back to the reds. So I think that's how I plan to put mine together. It's going to be more of a scrappy looking jelly roll. And now I'm going to show you how to actually sew all of these strips together. You'll notice here I have not even bothered to cut off the selvages, and the reason for that is because I am going to lay my fabric crosswise just like this, and I am simply going to sew a straight line from that corner to this corner, and then I will remove all of this I'll leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but that is how I'm going to connect all of the strips. And it's going to be a very, very long row of strips. You can certainly draw a line from here to there. I'm just going to eyeball it. Definitely put on your walking foot, because you're going to need the walking foot as we get to the batting and then rolling the jelly roll together. And so I just went ahead and put that walking foot on. Go ahead and get yourself about 5 bobbins filled with thread right away so that that's ready to go. And then right now I'm just using a straight stitch. My walking foot does make quite a bit of noise, but all right, so here we go again. I'm going to lay this right on there. So from corner to corner. Here's my corner right here. Keep an eye on that. Sewing straight down. Now these are tiny little strips. See that? They're not very long ones. Typically you're working with a much longer strip of fabric, but in my case, I'm using scraps. So I've got a lot of small ones here that I'm putting together. I'm putting together quite a few red ones right now because it will take a number of red ovals going around the rug to make sure that you can actually see the red. You could, if you choose, make it really scrappy and just simply choose a different color strip every time you sew these together, and that way it would be completely scrappy. There wouldn't be a focal point like I'm going to make sure I have a lot of reds showing and greens showing, etc. But you don't have to do that. You could simply sew them all together in a variety of colored strips. So as you can see, there's quite a bit here. I'm going to have to go through, trim them apart, get rid of the excess fabric there, and press them open. Some people then like to take the whole strip and press it in half. You're welcome to do that. I don't know that I'm going to mess with that step. I'm just going to take the batting that I'll have here in a moment and put that inside there, and then I'll work with that, and I'll show you how that step works here in just a second. All right, I've got a number of these strips sewn together, as you can see. And I've added white, or the lights, after the reds. And I've added greens after the lights. And now what I'm going to do is work on getting them cut apart and trimmed the excess fabric away. And then I'm going to press all of this open so those seam allowances are open once they're trimmed up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that at the iron, and I'll meet you back here. Couple of things I want to share with you. First of all of these corners that I trimmed off, I'm going to throw those in my crumb basket and use that for crumb quilting, so that doesn't have to be tossed in the trash. And what I have done, I've got everything sewn together. All of my strips are sewn together, and I have simply fanned them. I need to bring this up so you can see this better. I've simply fanned them back and forth on top of one another. So the reds are right here. I'm going to start out with the reds, and then the lights are in there, and then the greens are in the bottom. And the whole thing is simply fanned, and I'll be able to lay this on my lap or in front of me at the machine as I am matching this up with the batting. And you'll see that step in a minute. But before we get to that, I wanted to share with you how I put all of my batting together. I used a zigzag stitch on my machine, and I simply zigzagged all of my batting ends together. If you remember, I am using batting that I have stripped off of quilts after I've finished quilting them. So there's a variety of sizes, or lengths, I should say, within this batting ball. It's a huge ball, but there's lots of different pieces in there. So that entire thing has to be stitched together, just like the fabric itself has to be stitched together. And the best way to do it for batting is either to zigzag or use that fusible where you can just adhere it together, whichever you choose. So now that I have done that, I'm going to cut this all apart, and then I'm going to start showing you how you match this up with the inside of your fabric and roll it to create your jelly roll rug. Here's that product that I like to use when I'm trying to fuse batting, large pieces of batting together. It's called Heat Press. And this also works beautifully for this jelly roll rug process as well. So you just take tiny little strips and you place them across the ends and then press it. And that would make sure that all of your pieces of batting are stitched or adhered together. So you can either use a zigzag stitch, which is what I have done to get mine all together in one long piece, or you can use this heat and press, whichever you prefer. To get started, I'm going to place this batting roll here in a little basket at my feet, down at my feet, and that way it can roll from within this basket or from the floor, whatever works for you. So I will start with this end right here, and I'm going to match it up with my fabric. But this I'm going to have up my feet, and then my fanned long strip of fabric is going to be on my lap. Another product that you'll need are these clips. They are wonderful. I got mine off of Amazon. You can get these at your favorite quilt shop. You can get them online. They're just so much easier to use for this purpose other than pins. Pins will end up getting you stuck as you're working with it because you're going to go through this whole thing and you're going to try to pin as much as possible. Then you'll stitch and then you'll continue pinning. But simply what I'm doing is I've laid the batting in the center of the fabric on the inside. As you can see, it's on the wrong side. And I am folding the strip together in the center and then folding it up so that it meets here and then clip. And you'll want to continue doing that every so often. I'm going to probably do at least 6 feet of this, and then I'm going to put it under my sewing machine and using a straight stitch, a short straight stitch, probably a 2.0, I'm going to stitch the end of this together, probably 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So this becomes a stitched tube that you're going to be using. So the first step, of course, is just stitching the whole thing so it becomes a tube. And then once the tube is ready, then we're going to start putting it together and zigzagging it into an oval or a circle, whatever you choose. I'm going to start sewing now. I'm going to remove clips as I get to them. Kind of on a hump here. We'll have to see if it's going to make it through. There we go. You want the edges to match. Those folded edges should match. I'm stitching at about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, 1/8 of an inch from the folded edge, removing clips. You can see if we were using pins, it would be so much more difficult. These clips are just wonderful, especially for this type of project. And here we have it. So I've got this sewn, and we're creating what appears to be a tube. Now this will take some time, and so you'll want to allow yourself plenty of time. I'm going to continue clipping, sewing until I get through this entire fanned stack of fabric, and I have quite a bit here. I wasn't sure I'd have enough for a complete jelly roll rug, but I believe I am. Lots of different scraps in here, but I think it's going to work out beautifully. So I'm going to continue with this, and I'll show you my process every so often. Just a couple of things. These clips, if you Google sewing clips, you'll be able to find those on Amazon, or if you go into your quilt shop, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. They're just wonderful little itty-bitty clothespins, if you will, and often they come in multiple colors, but they're very helpful to have. This one's a strange name, but they're just sewing clips. There's 120 of them in this pack. Very helpful. And also I wanted to show you, bringing you a little closer here, as I am stitching, I am allowing all of this tube to roll up in this basket right here on the side of my machine. So I think that's very helpful if you want to do that. And then just remember, as you are folding these together, that you are ensuring that you're folding those so the raw edges meet in the center, and then you flip it over and then clip. So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing about 18 inches or so of clips. Then I sew it, removing a clip as I get to it, and then I fold another 18 inches or so. And I, again, have the fabrics fanned in my lap, and my batting is in the basket on the floor here. And so that's how I'm working with this. I finished creating my tube, and I just rolled it up in here as I stitched. Started with the red on the bottom, the cream, the green, and then I'm finishing with this dark Christmassy fabric on the outside edge. Now we're going to create the actual rug using this tube. I've set up my machine again with the walking foot. That's very important. And now you want to do a zigzag stitch. So you're going to use your widest zigzag stitch. I'm going to use 5.5 for the width, and I'm going to probably use a 2 for the length. Since I want to start with the red, I'm going to take this out and flip it over so that I start with my red as I create my rug. The thing that takes a little practice as you are sewing your rug together is making sure that you're allowing some ease on these corners. And as we're going around, we're going to continue stitching, but we want to make sure that we're allowing a little bit of ease on those corners so that they will lay flat as we go around. And I'll show you that as I start stitching here. I have a length of about 15 inches here of this rug or the tube, and I've turned it right underneath the walking foot, and I'm going to wrap around this 15-inch length, and that's how I'm going to continue starting on my oval. I've got a zigzag stitch going, and I am simply pushing those two tubes together and stitching them with a zigzag stitch. So I needed to rethread, but this allows you to see how I started. And I started up there, and I'm just zigzagging with this together, and I'll continue until I get down to this end, and then we're going to flip it, and I'm going to continue wrapping around and working it in a long oval. And I had to rethread. I had an issue here, I could tell, so I need to restitch this. I'm just using a white, or it's a cream-colored thread. You could certainly match your fabrics and your thread if you choose to, but I'm not worried about that. I'm simply going to use the same cream-colored thread in the top as well as in the bobbin. All right, now I'm coming toward the end, and I'm going to want to wrap around. So I'm going to get up here, making sure that I'm catching both sides of the tube. Sewing across the end of that first tube. I'm wrapping here. You do want to ease in some of this fabric because you definitely need the end or the corners back down there to curve properly. So as I turned that corner, I was pushing the excess or some ease in with this side so that there would be more fabric around that corner, which will allow that end of the rug to lay flat. And make sure as you're stitching that you're catching both tubes from each side. Yeah, I just realized something here as I'm going through this. I am working this incorrectly in that I have my rug on this side, which is going to continue to get in the way here. It's inside where the harp is. And this part of the rug should actually be out here. The only thing that should be under the harp area is this section. So I'm going to flip it upside down. Let me show you what I'm going to do and sew it from the other side. So if this happens to you, this is what you'll need to do. So now I'm going to flip it this way. Now you'll notice my rug is out here on this side, and it will continue growing, and I'll have room here on the side table for the rug to grow. And all I'll ever have under this side is just the tube that I'm working on, or the tube that I'm adding to this rug. So I'm glad that happened, because that I'm sure will happen to some of you. If it gets to the point where you're realizing you have all of your rug on the inside of your machine, you do have it on your machine backwards. So just flip it over like I've done. Now I've added some excess in here, which will allow, I'm trying to keep my hands out of the way, but it's hard because I need to hold it there. But this excess fabric in that tube up against the rug will allow there to be enough fabric that will keep the rug flat. And that's very important as you're going along these curves. I'm going to put my basket on the floor so it's out of my way. Continuing working around. And this is so much better with the rug on my left side instead of underneath my sewing machine. I've got a little bit of excess still right there. All right, excellent. Now I can just come on down. Make sure that you've got a zig and a zag going on each side on both tubes. See how nice and flat that lays. So at the beginning of putting this together, I was so interested in making sure that I showed you how to ease in this fabric as you go around the corners, because you want your rug to lay flat. You don't want it to be curling up. But I was so intent on that I neglected to see at first that I was fiddling with my rug on the inside of my machine. So again, if that happens to you, if you get started and find that your rug is on the inside of your machine instead of on the outside like this, then just cut where you are, flip it over, and start again from the bottom. And this is working out beautifully. I'm now into the second red, so the whole center of my rug is going to be red. Then we're going to see white, then we're going to see green, and then we're going to see that dark Christmas fabric around the outer side. And again, as I'm easing in this outer tube here, it's not much that I ease in, but just a little bit like that, which will allow the rug to stay flat on both ends. Oh, and I've already been through 3 bobbins. So I've just put in my 4th bobbin. I think maybe we need to have about 10 bobbins ready to go if you're going to do any decent sized rug. But one of the things that I've found is, especially on the busier prints, keep checking to make sure you haven't left any holes. It's very easy to miss a spot, especially on the busy fabrics. That's the one that I'm struggling with. But make sure that you go back and check so that you don't have any holes in your rug. I've come to the end, and what I've done is just cut a slanted edge there to the end, and I'll continue zigzagging here. And then when I get to this point, I'm going to kind of tuck it underneath and continue zigzagging right off the end so that I will hopefully have a rather smooth edge here. I've finished the rug. I love it. I believe it turned out really well. This could have been a lot scrappier if I would have sewn my pieces together where I had a color, a light, etc. You can make them all one color, use up all of your scraps, use up your jelly rolls. There's so many different ways that you can create these rugs. I finished my rug here, and it took me about 7 bobbins to get through this. It's not a real big one, but it's a perfect size for in front of the kitchen sink. So I'm excited to use this for Christmas time. It took me a couple of hours to get through getting everything, all of the tubes created, and then secure the tubes in an oval rug. You could certainly make your rug circular or even in an oblong shape if you'd like to. But the oval was what I chose to do today. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today to learn how to create a jelly roll rug. I'd love to see yours. Hopefully you'll all grab your 2.5-inch strips or a jelly roll that you might have on hand and create a beautiful jelly roll rug. And I'd love to see them. Make sure that you post pictures of them out on my Facebook group page, and I'll have that linked below. And then coming up next, we're going to be having decor that I'll be making with some of that estate sale fabric. I'll be giving you all kinds of ideas so that you can create some fun things using scrap fabrics that you have in your stash. I'm also going to teach you some Nana quilts, so make sure you stick around for that. You can see a preview of those in that estate sale fabric haul video, which is linked below. I also have some Scrappy quilts in the works, so make sure you stay tuned. Come on back each week. I'm posting another video which helps you to use up your scrap stash in some form or fashion. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share my videos with your friends and family and your quilt guilds. That really does help the channel to grow and get out to other quilters just like yourself. Thanks so much for doing that, and until next week, happy quilting.